So the cylinder head needed a lot of work. Cylinder head needed rebuild. The block itself is a little... Hey, what's up everybody? Today I've got a compression test of a 4.8 liter LS motor. I picked this up at a junkyard. My plans with it are to put it in my boat project. The Blue Water boat came with a 4-cylinder in it. 170 horsepower 4-cylinder, 3.7 liter. Took that out. Those engines have a bad rep. Took it out, I took it apart, and my choices were to rebuild that or get something new. And I ended up going with, somebody gave me the idea of saying, hey, why don't you put an LS motor in the boat? And I thought, well, maybe it'll work. So I went to the junkyard. I found it in a 2000 Silverado. I picked a 4.8 because there was no transmission attached to it. It was really easy to pull this one out. There's a few other engines there that I was interested in. Before I grabbed it at the junkyard, I inspected the inside of the cylinder bores, and they looked pretty good. The way I got this set up for a compression test, don't try it at home, obviously. I got a starter and a flywheel on the back, and it's just hot wired up to spin the engine over. And all I'm doing is touching a couple wires together to get it to crank over. So it's good enough to get a test in. Yeah, we'll see what it comes out to be. I'm not expecting a whole lot from this engine. The window on that 2000 Silverado that I got this engine from said that the engine smokes, so something's, it's burning oil. Most likely. I guess it could be a few different things. Okay, so here we go with the compression test, cylinder number 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We got about 138. Cylinder number 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 147. Cylinder number 5. 129. Cylinder number 7. 140. Cylinder number 2. 142. Cylinder 4. 130. 145. Actually, 144. Number 8. Okay, I just sprayed some Seafoam Deep Creep down into the cylinder for the spark plug, and I got about 151. Okay, cylinder number 3. Pretty much the only thing I'm getting right now is indicating 1 rings. We got 160 on that one. 147. Numero dos. Looking good. 148. 6. 151, 152. Number 8. 158. Okay, so here we go. Here's my numbers, right? And I need to find my lowest. I'll get my average. my highest number, and then the book says 25%. The lowest compression cylinder can not be lower than 25%, otherwise that would indicate a rebuild. The numbers for the oil are right here, added in oil. Now, if the pressure doesn't change after the oil, that indicates something besides the rings. It could be valves or something else. When the pressure increases after adding oil, that means that it's just piston ring wear, which is allowable as long as you got 25%. Highest pressure was 147, average 139-ish. My low was 129 on cylinder number 5. The book says 25% is allowable. So I'm going to go off of the book, because that's what I do, which would have been 110. 129 is above that 110, so I'm good, according to the book standards. So after the oil, high was 160, low, skip the average, low was 147, minimum allowed was 120. I'm well above that. Looking pretty good with not needing to rebuild this engine. I'm very happy with this. The engine really just is dirty here. You know what, for shits and giggles, let's do 10%. Percent within the highest one. 10% would have been 132 psi, the highest. Which 2 cylinders are just, one's 3 psi off, the other one's 2 psi off. 2 psi, am I really going to change it over that when the book says 25%? No. I'm not going to go with 10%. They can stick it. 10% on this guy on the oil would have been 16 psi, 144. The lowest, again, 3 psi. The book says 25%. I'm not going with this 10% rule. Changed my mind. Alright, so the compression test went better than I thought it was going to go. Dry test. Mind you, all these numbers are not hot. I mean, you're supposed to do a compression test on a warm engine. The reason behind that is that the piston rings and everything's going to seal up better, so you'll get better numbers. My high compression was 147 psi. The average is about 139. The low was 129. Now the book says on this engine that anything over 100 is acceptable, and the book says 25% variance from the highest cylinder to your lowest cylinder is acceptable. Not 10% like you see all over the internet and Facebook. Everyone's saying, oh, 10%, 10%. Well, when it comes to rebuilding an engine, 10% is not really a whole lot. 10% is a very minuscule amount. If you don't really have any serious problems with your engine, then there's no reason to rebuild it, even if you have 10% of a difference between pressures. I mean, if the engine's running good, it's not misfiring, and you got 10% difference on the cylinder, don't rip it apart and start rebuilding it. Unless you can, unless you get the free time, unless you got the money. Then, by all means, knock yourself out. So my compression test came to the conclusion that my piston rings are worn. And they're acceptable, but they're worn. Here's the downside to that, is that what will happen from worn piston rings is excessive blow-by. Now the book says this is acceptable, so it's kind of like, well, what do I do? The valves have not really shown on the compression test that they were bad. So as long as the head gasket's not fried on this thing, then you know what, this engine is in great shape. It's dirty as crap, but you know what, it'll clean up, it'll look awesome. The question is, to rebuild or not to rebuild? Well, I think I could go without rebuilding it. I guess we'll see what happens, and I'll try and document as much as I can. So, hopefully you like the video. Like, comment, subscribe. Pass on, share it on. This is going to be the Blue Water LS project, and it's going to be badass when it's all done.